Have you ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most clearly? Your worth dismissed by those whose approval you once craved? Picture toiling in silence, building something extraordinary, only to have your family label you a failure until the moment you unveil a truth so staggering it redefines everything. That's my story. A tale of quiet triumphs and a revelation that shattered decades of misunderstanding. I'm Camilla Johnson, and I want to take you back to where it all began. To a childhood overshadowed by a family legacy I was never meant to claim. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from. And if this story resonates, hit that subscribe button. There's more to come. I'm 35 now, living in Chicago, where the skyline glitters with possibility and the hum of ambition fuels my days. But growing up in the North Shore suburbs, in a sprawling 5,000 square foot house that felt more like a museum than a home, I was the outlier in the Johnson family portrait. My father, Richard Johnson, was the architect of Johnson Industries, an electrical components manufacturer he built from a single warehouse in 1990 into a mid-sized empire by the time I was born. To him, the company wasn't just a business. It was his identity, his true child. Every dinner conversation revolved around production quotas or supplier contracts, and every holiday was a stage for potential investors. My mother, Eleanor, played her role with grace, the impeccable homemaker who kept our lives polished while Dad poured his soul into the factory floor. Then there was my brother, David, 4 years my senior at 39, the golden heir groomed from childhood to inherit Dad's throne. From age 15, he shadowed Dad at the plant, absorbing the rhythm of machines and the weight of expectation. I, on the other hand, was the question mark, the daughter who didn't fit the mold. While Dad and David revered the tangible circuit boards, assembly lines, I was captivated by the invisible currents of finance, the systems that powered industries. Where they saw components, I saw capital flows and market inefficiencies. I didn't want to build things. I wanted to orchestrate the forces that made building possible. But to Dad, finance was a necessary evil, a game of paper pushing unfit for a Johnson. When I announced my plan to study finance at Northwestern, his sigh was heavy with disappointment, as if I'd chosen a path of frivolity over legacy. That moment planted a seed of resolve in me, a quiet vow to prove my worth, even if he couldn't see it. The Chicago skyline became my refuge, a constellation of glass and steel that mirrored the ambition I'd nurtured since leaving home at 18. I threw myself into my studies at Northwestern, graduating summa cum laude with a degree in finance, my name etched in gold on the dean's list. That achievement, like so many others, went unnoticed by my family, but it opened doors to Meridian Partners, a boutique investment firm specializing in industrial turnarounds. There, I carved a reputation as a strategist who could spot value in crumbling companies, orchestrating deals that saved jobs and restored balance sheets. By 30, I was managing portfolios worth tens of millions of dollars. My office on the 35th floor of a downtown tower offering panoramic views of Lake Michigan's restless waves. Yet, no matter how high I climbed, the weight of my family's indifference pressed against me, a silent reminder of the gap between who I was and who they wanted me to be. Family gatherings at our North Shore home were a ritual of exclusion. I'd arrive at the 5,000 square foot colonial, clutching a bottle of Cabernet as armor, only to watch Dad introduce David as my son, the future of Johnson Industries, his voice swelling with pride. I was Camilla, my daughter. The words flat, as if my existence needed no elaboration. I stopped sharing my successes, promotions, deals closed, industry awards because they dissolved in the face of Dad's disinterest. Once, at a Christmas party doubling as a networking event, I overheard him tell a colleague, "Women in banking. They'll chew her up in 5 years." I was 28, already outlasting his prediction, but the sting of his words lingered. David, too, played his part, his fraternal affection laced with condescension. "How's life moving papers around?" Mila, he'd tease, clapping my shoulder as if I were a child playing at business. I'd force a smile, swallow my retort, and sip my wine. My 200 square foot downtown apartment calling me back to a world where I was seen. By 2018, The financial crisis rippled through manufacturing, and whispers reached me not from family, but from industry contacts that Johnson Industries was in peril. The company, sprawled across a 200,000 square foot facility, had overextended itself with a $10 million expansion, banking on orders that never materialized. By early 2019, it teetered on bankruptcy, its cash reserves drained, banks refusing loans, and assets poised for a fire sale. I learned this not from Dad, who'd rather face ruin than admit vulnerability, nor from David, whose pride mirrored our father's. They never called, never sought my expertise. Though saving distressed companies was my daily work, the realization cut deep. Dad would scour every bank in Chicago before asking his daughter for help. His dismissal of my career so absolute, it blinded him to the lifeline I could offer. Sitting in my apartment, the city's lights sprawling beyond my balcony, I grappled with a choice. I could let Johnson Industries collapse, proving Dad's failure, or I could act, not for his approval, but for the legacy I couldn't entirely abandon. The decision crystallized in the quiet of that night, setting a course that would redefine our family's story. I didn't know then how it would unfold, but I knew it began with me stepping into the shadows, wielding the expertise they'd never valued. The decision to save Johnson Industries ignited a quiet fire within me, not born of vengeance, but of a duty I couldn't shake. As if the factory's humming machines still echoed in my bones. In the spring of 2019, I stood before Meridian Partners Investment Committee, my voice steady as I pitched the acquisition of a distressed but salvageable manufacturer. I laid bare my connection to the company, recusing myself from the final vote to ensure impartiality. Yet my argument was relentless. Johnson Industries, with its 200 square foot facility and loyal client base, was undervalued, its potential obscured by mismanaged debt. The committee approved a $15 million infusion, a lifeline disguised as a business deal, and tasked me with overseeing the turnaround. To shield my involvement from my family's pride, I enlisted Alex Chen, my colleague and confidant, as the intermediary, his name the only one they'd know. By June, Dad signed the papers, believing Alex represented faceless investors, never suspecting I held 51% of his life's work. From my 35th floor office, I became the shadow architect of the company's revival, restructuring $8 million in debt, streamlining supplier contracts, and approving upgrades to outdated equipment. Each decision was a delicate balance, preserving the factory's core while fortifying its financial spine. Alex relayed my directives, his calm precision a buffer against Dad's grumbling about spreadsheet-obsessed outsiders. At family gatherings, I sat through their complaints, nodding sympathetically as David lamented investor meddling, my silence a shield for the truth. The irony was sharp. Every modernization they praised, every contract they secured, bore my invisible signature. Over 2 years, the company stabilized, its cash reserves climbing to $5 million, orders flowing again. Yet, the weight of my secret grew heavier with each visit home, where Dad's dismissive nods and David's patronizing smirks reminded me why I'd chosen deception. I hadn't planned to reveal my role, content to let the factory thrive under their illusion of control. But secrets, like fault lines, have a way of cracking under pressure. And mine was about to rupture in the most unexpected setting, a holiday table laden with cranberry sauce and unspoken grudges. Thanksgiving 2024 arrived with a chill that mirrored the tension I carried into my parents' North Shore home. Its 5,000 square foot elegance, a stage for familiar rituals. I clutched a bottle of Pinot Noir, my emotional armor, as Mom's too-tight hug and David's condescending, "How's the paper chase?" Mila set the tone. The dining room, aglow with crystal and silver, hummed with Mom's military precision traditions, turkey carved by Dad, wine poured by David, and me, sipping silently, braced for exclusion. Conversation followed its predictable script, David and Dad dissecting production tweaks, Mom and Caroline chatting about charity galas until Dad cleared his throat over pumpkin pie. His fork set down with deliberate weight. He announced Johnson Industries' turnaround, crediting David's exemplary leadership and unveiling a $20 million buyback plan to reclaim control from the investors. The proposal was reckless. The company's $5 million reserves too thin to shoulder such debt. And I couldn't stay silent. Is that financially sound, I asked? My tone neutral but pointed. Dad's eyes narrowed. His voice icy. Not everything's about numbers. Camilla, pride matters more than your balance sheets. David piled on, sneering. Some of us build things, not just analyze them. The dismissal, so casual, so complete, snapped something inside me. Years of swallowed retorts surged forward. And I spoke. My voice low but unyielding. The company was 3 months from collapse 2 years ago. Why do you think it recovered? Dad scoffed. We adapted. Through grit you'd never understand. Shuffling papers downtown. The room stilled. Mom's eyes wide. Caroline's napkins suddenly fascinating. I leaned forward. Each word a blade. I saved Johnson Industries. I'm the investor who bought 51% in 2019. I restructured your debt, approved your upgrades, and made every major decision since. Silence swallowed the table. I pulled a folded document from my purse, sliding it across the mahogany. My signature's at the bottom. Your buyback, it needs my approval. And it's not happening. Dad's face drained of color. David's jaw hung slack. And I stood, purse in hand, walking out into the November night. The weight of truth both liberating and crushing. In my 200-square-foot apartment, the Chicago skyline a silent witness. My phone buzzed with Mom's texts and David's voicemails, but nothing from Dad. I silenced them, pouring a scotch as Alex called. Your father's livid, he said, his voice steady. He's consulting attorneys. Claims we conspired. I sighed, ice clinking in my glass. Are we exposed, Alex? Ever the lawyer turned strategist? Was firm. The acquisition's airtight. You disclosed your connection, recused yourself, and followed every protocol. It's just messy now. Messy was an understatement. The next morning, at Meridian's 35th floor office, Lake Michigan, steel gray beyond the windows, I faced Dad, David, and their attorney, James Whitman, Meredith Zhao, our legal counsel, flanked Alex and me. Her presence a quiet force. Dad's voice was controlled but venomous. You hid this. Let us negotiate with our daughter like fools. I met his gaze. I disclosed everything to the committee. Would you have accepted my help if I'd offered it openly? From the daughter who shuffles papers, David interjected. You lied to us, running the company like a puppet master. I turned to him. Would you have followed my lead if you knew, be honest? His silence was answer enough. Meredith confirmed the deal's legality, but Dad demanded a buyback. I shook my head. The company can't afford $20 million in debt. It's recovering, not invincible. I slid a proposal across the table, a 3-year plan for gradual family ownership, tied to financial benchmarks. Review it. I said, standing, but I won't let pride tank what I've rebuilt. Dad's eyes held a flicker of uncertainty, a crack in his armor. As they left, the weight of our fractured legacy hanging heavy in the air, the November air lingered, sharp and unforgiving, as I wrestled with the wreckage of my Thanksgiving confession. Weeks later, a small package arrived at my downtown office, its elegant wrapping betraying no hint of sender. Inside, a silver frame held a photograph from a distant summer me, a wide-eyed girl on Johnson Industries' factory floor, peering at a circuit board as Dad explained its secrets. A note, scrawled on company letterhead, accompanied it. I lost sight of the daughter who asked fearless questions. I'd like to start again. Christmas Eve, 7 p. Mal. Just family. The words, raw and unadorned, pierced the armor I'd built, stirring a cautious hope. I arrived at the North Shore house under a blanket of fresh snow, the 12-foot Christmas tree casting a warm glow. Mom's embrace held a new weight, her voice trembling. I failed you. Camilla, staying silent while they diminished you. Her apology. Unexpected. Cracked open a door long sealed. Dinner unfolded with strained civility. The clink of crystal masking deeper currents. David's gaze was guarded. Caroline's measured. But it was Dad who shifted the night's trajectory. I was wrong, he said, his voice rough with effort. to box you into my vision of legacy. The admission hung heavy, a bridge across decades of dismissal. David bristled, his resentment spilling out. You played us. Camilla, pulling strings like a shadow CEO. Caroline, her therapist's insight cutting through, urged honesty. You're all guarding old wounds, hurting each other to protect them. The table became a confessional. David venting the pressure of being the heir. Me unearthing the pain of erasure. Dad proposed a radical shift. Join us as CFO. Camilla, your financial mind. David's operational grit. My experience were stronger together. The offer was a siren call, promising integration but threatening the independence I'd carved at Meridian. I hesitated. The Chicago skyline's distant pulse, a reminder of my hard-won autonomy. By January 2025, I stepped into Johnson Industries' $200, 600 square foot facility as CFO, my nameplate gleaming on a sleek office door. The all-hands meeting buzzed with curiosity. Dad's voice carrying a pride I'd never heard as he introduced me. David stood stiffly, his acceptance grudging but present. In our first executive session, I scrutinized an $8 million acquisition, spotting inflated projections that others missed. We need deeper due diligence, I insisted, my tone firm but collaborative. David's jaw tightened, then relaxed. Reasonable. I'll delay talks. The moment, small but seismic, marked a new equilibrium, over whiskey in Dad's office. He reflected. David's adjusting, but it's hard. Sharing a future he thought was his alone. I nodded, catching myself softening opinions to avoid old frictions, yet sensing progress. The factory's hum, once a symbol of exclusion, now felt like a pulse I could shape, a legacy no longer at odds with my truth. Spring 2025 bloomed, softening Chicago's edges, and Johnson Industries flourished under our reshaped leadership. A Sunday dinner at the North Shore house carried a different air. Mom pulling me into her kitchen, her domain once sacrosanct. Help with the sauce, she said, handing me an apron, her smile a quiet invitation to a bond beyond formality. As I stirred, her stories of burnt dinners and early struggles wove a thread of intimacy I hadn't known I craved. Later, Dad led me to his study, unlocking a drawer to reveal a worn folder. Inside, clippings and awards chronicled my journey, from high school victories to finance monthly profiles. Kept in secret, I was proud, he admitted, but feared you'd outgrow us. He handed me a new company charter, our signatures mine, his, David's cementing equal partnership. This is your legacy, too, he said. The words a balm to old wounds. David raised a whiskey glass at dinner's end, his toast measured but sincere. To Johnson Industries and family, flaws and all, our glasses clinked. A fragile harmony. The company secured a $12 million contract, my financial restructuring enabling expansions that David's efficiencies made feasible back in my 200 square foot apartment, the skyline a glittering testament to my choices. I spread the folder's contents across my table. Each clipping was a piece of me, daughter, sister, executive no longer fractured. The factory's 200 square foot sprawl, once a cage, now stood as a canvas for integration, where my expertise and family's grit intertwined. Tensions lingered, moments when old patterns surfaced. But we caught them, recalibrating with hard-won awareness. This wasn't perfection, but a beginning, authentic and whole. As I traced the folder's edges, I knew the work of weaving past and future continued. A legacy not just preserved, but reimagined. Stay tuned for more stories like this. And if this moved you, hit subscribe, you won't want to miss what's next. In the quiet of my downtown Chicago apartment, with the skyline's glow casting shadows across my dining table, I traced the edges of the folder Dad gave me. Its clippings a map of a journey I hadn't fully understood until now. My story taught me that true strength lies not in proving others wrong, but in building something enduring despite their doubt. I spent years chasing validation, believing my family's dismissal defined my worth, only to learn that their blindness was their own, not a measure of my value. Saving Johnson Industries, revealing my role, And stepping into its leadership wasn't about triumph over Dad or David. It was about honoring the part of me that still believed in our shared legacy. Even when they couldn't see it, I learned to hold my ground. Not with anger, but with clarity, letting my work speak where words failed. The 200 Zara square foot factory, once a symbol of exclusion, became a canvas for integration, where my financial acumen and their operational grit could coexist. Yet, the deeper lesson was in the fragility of reconciliation. Family wounds don't heal overnight, but they mend through persistent, honest effort. I discovered that legacy isn't a static inheritance, but a living process, reshaped by every choice to listen, to forgive, to evolve. As I look out at the city, its pulse a reminder of the life I've built. I realize my greatest achievement wasn't owning the company, but claiming my place in it, whole and unapologetic, trusting that authenticity, not approval, is the foundation of any lasting triumph.